Step by step, I'm taking you through an understanding of the Kabbalah, but from a different angle entirely, because it is so much part of our life, and most people do not fully realize it or grasp it. I want to start off with a very nice little story. You've heard of LaGuardia Airport. Now, LaGuardia actually was a very much loved mayor of New York, and before that he was a judge who was also loved. Now, in the 1930s, as you know, everybody knows, was a very deep depression. There was real starvation. And the United States is not like here. Each one has got to live their own life. And so people are left in a terrible situation. One day, a grandfather was caught stealing a couple of loaves of bread. He was arrested and he was brought to trial. And who was the judge? LaGuardia. So LaGuardia says to him, okay, you have stolen these witnesses. Please tell us your story. So he said, look, before you sentence me, you should know, I have grandchildren who are starving. And I had to go and steal bread. I have no money. Nobody has money. And these kids are crying, and there's 4 of them. So that's why I needed the 2 loaves of bread. And that's not really much, but at least that will keep them going. So the judge says, I'm going to fine you $10. Now, $10 was a lot of money in those days. And he was totally shocked. There's no way I can pay that. And then the judge says, I'm fining everyone in this courthouse, including me, $20, and we're going to give it to this man to be able to pay his fine and feed the grandchildren. Because we're all responsible, we should all be ashamed that there are people in that situation. The law is the law, but there's such a thing as chesed, loving kindness. King David was well known for this. He would sentence a poor man, he had to, judgment is judgment. And then he would take money out of his own pocket and pay it. And he always used to say, I pray that nobody will take advantage of this. But nevertheless, that's what he did. Now, the first day of creation is known as chesed, loving kindness. So when we discussed last time, what was created in the first sentence of the Torah? And I will go over it again to make sure that we all understand. First of all, it said the word in Hebrew, Bereshit, which in Kabbalah it says, bara shit, that means in Aramaic, he created 6. Now, before I carry on, I want everybody to know, everyone sitting here, and those people who are late or not coming, are all descended from Adam and from Abraham. So everything I'm saying, or almost everything I'm saying, applies to everyone who's sitting here. Isaac was the first Jew. Abraham was a convert. Isaac was brought up as a Jew. Very interesting. A lot of people don't realize that. So you have all these laws, and what happened was we had the Hebrew letters, words, and special tunes. They're programmed into our soul. We have a seed inside of our soul, which we have to water and let it grow stronger. So when we hear a word or a letter or a special tune like Ana B'Koach, it somehow connects with our soul. And that's what it does. We can't explain it. If I say chesed to you, it's a strange word, but loving kindness, everybody understands. Now, so the first day was chesed, loving kindness. And I said the second thing, so it created 6, we'll come back to that in a minute. And then after that, He created Elohim, God. Bereshit, bara Elohim. In the beginning, he created God. Now, that's a strange thing to say. So I want us to look right back to the beginning of time, to nothingness. Not nothing, but nothingness. Here was this energy, we'll call it an energetic force, which we can't understand it, who is everything, in everything, including ourselves, in every cell, in every neuron that we have, in our DNA and everything else on the planet and in the universe, is part. So before anything was created, Hashem, we call him the name, not a person, was there, and there was nothing else. Everything was above time, space, or motion. There was nothing to move. So, but time and space was zero. It wasn't even a concept. And then Hashem made space for the world. And we learn from this that we have to give other people space and ourselves space, because we're all made in the image of God. So whatever I'm saying applies to us personally in our daily lives. So what's Elohim? Elohim is known as justice. But justice is order. So that 6 is the laws of nature, the rules of physics. Justice means everything had to be justified. Now, anybody knows anything about engineering? You justify the equipment. You have to justify means it lined up properly. Otherwise, it's total chaos. So that's where it says he created Elohim. He created that aspect of Hashem, which is justice and order. And then the next, something else was big was created that day, and that was light. But not later on, the moon, the sun and the moon were created. So that was to divide between day and night. But this light was a very, very special light. Now we've been told that it was hidden away. But it's hidden away, and yet not hidden for those people who seek it out. The word for world is olam. The word for worlds is olamot. But olam means hidden. So everything is hidden from us. Even in this world, we live in a flat world. It looks flat. That's why people thought it was flat. And yet it's round. But in the Kabbalah, and in also the book of creation by Abraham, it tells us it's round. But we don't see it. We do if we go to space and we look back, we can see it's round. From physics and science, we know it's round. Otherwise, rivers won't flow if it's not round. There's no slopes. So we can't see. So everything is hidden from us. And we were told, go and discover, go and uncover, go and find out, because everything is there. We just had a festival, the New Year for trees. Trees, plants, flowers. And it's very interesting. It comes at the same time when we're told in the Bible, all the illnesses of Egypt I won't visit on you. You won't have any of the illnesses in Egypt. What illnesses they were, I'm not going to go into detail now because that's not important. But it did not include natural illnesses. And so we celebrate at the same time that we have this in the Bible, in the Torah, the New Year for trees. There's a number of New Years in Jewish life in the year, but the New Year for trees and plants, and because all of the cures, everything you have, are hidden in trees, plants, flowers, anything that grows. Go discover it. Go find it. And that is the connection between the two. So we have to have an awareness what we were given and what we have to do with it. So if the world is hidden and the universe is hidden, we have to go discover it, otherwise why are we here? But what about the light? All of us go through darkness in our lives, in one form or the other. Darkness is challenge. We don't have challenges, we don't develop our minds. We don't advance as human beings. We're told in the Kabbalah that if you don't have a challenge or a problem for 1 week, it means God doesn't love you anymore. He said, what are you talking about? I thought it was only loving kindness, only love, chesed, unconditional love. It is, because you cannot advance unless you have challenges, because you'll stay in the same place. Now, each one of us have this challenge. And what we have to do is, every time something happens to us, we have to deal with new realities. In other words, not look back at what we had or where we have to leave, whether it's a home, a job, a family, a country, from wellness to sickness. There are many, many changes that we have to have in our lives. We have to always say, that's gone. We're living in a new reality. The whole thing is that we should leave the past, not live in the past. And we have to have this in our mind all the time. But what is there to help us? A special light was created that we can bring it into our lives. Why? We're created in the image of God. So everything you see that Hashem did, we have to try to do. And many things that we can't do. We can't create something from nothing. But we recreate ourselves, help to recreate our children. As I said to a group last week, I told them that in actual fact, before you get married, a single, you are two separate individuals. After you're married, there's a new reality because you're letting someone else into your space. At the same time, making sure you give them space, otherwise the marriage will not last. It's impossible. It's impossible to live really in the same space all the time. So now you have a child. Everybody says, well, a child was born, we had a baby. But you were also born on that day. What do you mean also born on that day? You suddenly became parents. You're also going to grow as parents and advance. You've never been parents. So you have to think of that, you're growing with the child. Now what does that mean in practical terms? In practical terms it means that everybody has their negatives and positives, their weaknesses. Tend to fight in front of the children or show an angry face. I'm talking about men and women. And we also have weaknesses. We also have different ideals in our life. So children only see black and white. They do not see a grey shadow in the middle. So you can't kids see everything. And you know when they see? From 40 days inside the mother's womb. 40 days, hears everything, feels everything. And you're already affecting that baby before it's even born. So we have to change. We have to work on our negatives and build up our positives together because we're one unit. Now, a lot of people say, I'm looking for a soulmate or have a soulmate, but what does it really mean? A soulmate works like this. I promised you, all of my announcements, I talk about the journey of a soul. So what happens is a soul comes down like Adam and Eve, one soul, and it's split into two parts. One might be born much earlier than the other, or at the same time, but they belong to each other. They're two parts that have to come together. And that's why it says it's one soul in spirit and you belong to each other. You're part of each other. And if you don't feel that, then don't get married. And unfortunately, don't stay around, although that can be repaired sometimes. Many people ask, how come King David had, he divorced and remarried and divorced and remarried. What happened? Because in the end, he found his real soulmate. He married whoever he married first, and for whatever reason. It was necessary in a plan that we don't even understand. But everything is for the good. But one has to be very careful before one starts. So it is the same soul in two. Now, and one gets the feeling that that is the soul. So if we look at that, and we look at that special light, we always know that we can draw down that light into our lives. Now, we've had reflection, connection, mind direction exercises, which I have no choice but to call meditation, otherwise people won't know what I'm talking about. But we've had where we're drawing down energy. Perhaps this time we'll do it a bit later on. We're drawing down energy. And that energy is there and is part of light. So we can draw down that light. It means we have to have certainty, absolute certainty. We have to believe even the impossible is possible. And we also have to believe in abracadabra. Abracadabra is I will create what I say. The whole world was created like that. Everything. We also have that power to create situations. We speak negatively, that's what's going to happen. So here you have what was created in the first day. And the concept goes far beyond what we're reading, because there's such a thing which is called paradise. Everybody recognizes that word, paradise, right? The word paradise comes from paradise. But in Kabbalah, what does that mean? The P stands for pshat, the simple explanation, the story you see in front of you. Somebody's talking to you as well, not only in Bible sources, but also somebody's speaking to you. So you can understand that person, pshat, simply you hear what they're saying and you take their words as it is. And then the next, the R, the Resh stands for remez, a hint. But wait a minute, I'm listening to this, but I can hear the person's voice. I can see their body language. I can feel that there's something else there. Something else that I have to pick up. When we learn the Bible and we see a story, there's a big story behind it. But you only get a hint. Because one has always got to ask questions. Ask questions all the time. And then there's questions on the questions. You've got big books that have been written, the Talmud, and many, many other books based on those questions. So you get a hint. But it's in our relationships as well you get a hint. When you hear a politician talking, listen very carefully. And sometimes you can hear what they're really saying. Right? And then you have D, Dalet. That's Dart, knowledge. Now you have to research on Google. You have to search on Google and say, hey, wait a minute, what they told me, maybe they don't know what they're talking about, or maybe I can learn a lot more. You check it out. And Google is one of my big proofs, as I had mentioned about 4 months ago, that we today can understand much more what Hashem is all about, God is all about. For those people who have not been before, I don't like using the word God, because God connotates idols, the gods. And therefore we don't use that word. We say Hashem, the name. Because it's not a human being, it's a force that we have to absorb and feel in us and part of us and part of everything. So, the knowledge means that we have to learn, we have to study. An enormous number of people give an opinion and they don't even know what you're talking about or what they're talking about. They have no idea. They'll say something and they got the wrong end of the stick. They translate it in their own way and understand. So that deep knowledge, that's what we have to work on. And when one is learning Kabbalah, which is Torah, we have to understand first. Well, there's a lot of fantastic books to read, and today we're fortunate. Every book, almost every book that is important, you can get in English, French, Spanish. You can even get my book in Spanish. I won't say it's on the level, nowhere near. But, so you got the famous Tanya, people know about this. Other books that you can take, but you still need a teacher and a guide to walk you through it. So that is knowledge. Thirst for knowledge all the time. And then you've got Pardes, the last letter, S, which is Sod, secret. The secret's hidden inside. Everybody's got a secret hidden inside. Many people don't even know their own secret. They don't know it. So they have to go to all sorts of therapy to find out. But everybody's got that inside. And so is the Bible, so is Kabbalah. So we have to look at the words that are being used. What is real paradise? I'm going to tell you. And it's going to shock a few people, I think. What happens to a soul when it leaves the body? What is the word that they call hell? Hell doesn't exist. No such thing as hell. And yet, there's a hell experience that can be for 1 year. And it depends very much how we live our lives. Now, if we're materialistic, if we follow our eyes and have all sorts of desires, it's normal to have desires, but binge drinking and binge eating and binge messing around and binge hanging out or binge watching football matches, yes, you can have all of that. But if that becomes the important and real side of your life, then there's something wrong. So what we have to have is a spiritual level. That's why we're here today. We have to have a spiritual level, not only in studying, but in the way we live, the way we conduct ourselves. It's all very well coming to hear a talk. We must try and live those ideals. We must try to copy. And it's very interesting that out of the trillion cells that we have, and everybody's exactly the same, out of the trillion cells that we have, 20% are called, neurons, are called mirror neurons. Now, mirror neurons is very powerful. You know, when we're studying, we're learning a new profession, we want to become what we're trying to be, then you have those neurons bonding together. So in my book, I've got those who breathe together, bond together, and stay together. With neurons it is those who fire together, bond together, and stay together. Very important to remember this. The neurons that fire together, bond together, and stay together. So when you need to learn a subject, with your doctor, a dentist, an engineer, a pilot, you're programming your brain. You're firing those neurons and they bond together with that knowledge. So you can do automatically. I mean, most people see it driving a car. You get there. The difficulty is sometimes when you change your house, your home, and you're still driving to the same place and, oh, what am I doing? Because you programmed your mind. But the same applies to depression, negativity, or history is going to repeat itself for good or for bad, complaining all the time about one's life. There are many people who've got a story to tell. Instead of talking positively, that's also firing the neurons, the mirror neurons, and they bond together and it's difficult to get rid of it. You know, when I'm teaching hypnotherapy, very interesting that a person can have a pain which is called a shadow pain. What has happened is the pain is no longer there, but it is there because there's a trauma. That pain at one time, because of an operation or a series of operations, caused a trauma. And because they keep talking about it, the pain is actually felt. And I think 2 months ago I spoke to you about drain the pain. It's mainly in the brain. And you'll say, but wait a minute, my pain is real. If you've got a pain in your tooth and you fixed an appointment to go to the dentist, or they're already working on it, so you don't need the pain anymore. You know, it's very dangerous for somebody who doesn't feel pain, because he doesn't know something's wrong. His foot can fall off and he doesn't even know. Might notice the blood. But breaks a leg, breaks a bone, doesn't feel the pain. That's a terrible thing. So the pain is there to protect us. It's a gift. But the pain in our lives as well. So we went through a difficult divorce. We had a terrible childhood. We went through a war. We went through terrible poverty. It is no longer there. That was in the past. But many people have that trauma. And it's still with them, expecting, something else will fail. Something else negative will happen. He shouted at me yesterday, so he'll shout at me tomorrow. But maybe I can do something about it. One doesn't have to. So when you've got that, it's something that we have to remember. It's programmed within us. But if the world is full of chesed, loving kindness, and light that we can download, and energy we can download, then we have to be happy. Because we know that life carries on. We just got a new reality that we have to live with. And that is why it says, Hashem recreates the world every day. What does it mean? Recreates the world to fit in with your new reality. So suddenly it's a new life. And it's very interesting, one of the great Kabbalists, the Bahir, he said about next world. You know, we say when people's going to the next world. You know what it means? This world. We had our home at one period of time in South Africa for 9 years. We had lots of friends. We had a routine. We had a beautiful house. We had everything we wanted. Kids went to school. Everybody was happy. And then we changed our lives. We had a new reality. So what we were doing, sometimes I don't like to use this expression because it's been adopted from Judaism to another religion. You're born again. You've gone to the next world. You've advanced. It's always for the good. It might be a smaller home. It might be less pay. But you're living your life. Sometimes it's a great advantage not to have to follow after all of the socializing that one has in a top job, and suddenly you're not in that same situation anymore. You've been born again. It's always for the better. We're tested in one situation, now we have to be tested in another situation. So when it says Olam Haba, the next world, it doesn't mean when you die and you're going into the next world. But it does mean also that the next world is you die and the soul comes back into a baby and is born again. But in our own lives we must learn from this that we should be born again. Life and things change all the time and we adapt. Many people come from different countries, even sitting in this room, different countries. And suddenly it's a new life, and it's in the past. Now, can you imagine if a soul knew it's all its previous lives? It would create a few difficulties. So I get back to what happens with the soul. The soul has become very attached to material things or very attached to spiritual things. Sometimes it's just a balance at various degrees. The soul doesn't lose the same feelings, emotions, hurt, pain, reactions to good things and tragedy in the world and in their family. The soul feels it. But the soul, if it was spiritual and only had a loving kindness attitude to everybody, not only their own family, so therefore they can get used to being a soul very quickly. But otherwise they go through terrible, terrible pain. They feel that pain. They can no longer do these material things. It's finished. It's over. And that's the hell that they go through. For up to 1 year, even a murderer, unless his soul's been cut off, which is another subject, but even a murderer, somebody who has committed lots of sins that or behaved in a way he shouldn't have behaved, 1 year is the maximum. After that, they're cleaned out and they become a soul, got rid of all of those negative emotions and materialistic emotions that they had. Of course, we don't like to say that a relative that passed away had to use up the whole 12 months, so we stop at 11 months. But the maximum is 12, unless they've been cut off. And there's such a thing as a soul being cut off. So we're looking at a life which has within it the sod, the secrets. Many of those secrets we'll only find out when it's necessary to find it out. The secrets in our own lives that we haven't uncovered yet. None of us know the future. On the other hand, we have to move forward with very great confidence. So I'd like to tell you one of my own stories, which will illustrate this. I fortunately was brought up in a family that was very, very poor. In those days, people were not paid. They were paid a weekly wage packet with cash in that packet, and it was usually weekly, W-E-A-K-L-Y. 8 children, 10 people to support. There was no money. And we lived in a house in Willesden Green. Terrific house. It's only because the German prisoners of war built those houses and the government helped you to get it, because everybody was essentially homeless. I'm talking about the people, the citizens in England. And it was a time, of course, when there's no television, no radio, and even if you had the money, we couldn't buy that. And so we learned to be creative. At the age of 11, I would go after school and I would work all sorts of jobs because I needed money, not only for myself, but to help my father. Because as we grew older, who's going to buy our clothes? He certainly could not afford to do that. And each one of us learnt, but there's one thing that our parents kept on telling us again and again. You stand up and you believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Don't let anything negative come in the way. Don't let anyone push you down. I'd like to tell you a little story that some of you might or might not know. There's a very famous star. I never listened to him, but there's a famous star called Zero. I've forgotten the name of the family.
Zero Mostel?
Yeah, Zero Mostel. In Hollywood. Now, his name actually was a Jewish name, very much Jewish. And they said, look, you have to choose a name. So he chose Zero, which they liked. Where did it come from? When he was growing up, all of the rest of the family were very successful. Doctors, rabbis, lawyers, I mean, they were doing well. And he couldn't do anything. And everybody used to call him, you're a zero, you are nothing, and you never will be anything. And we've heard people talk like that. even to their own children. Oh, well, look at you. You look what he's doing and look what you're doing. You are nothing and you remain a nothing. And so he decided to call himself Zero in order to teach them a lesson. But that's the sort of thing that my parents taught us. Ignore everybody. You have to believe in yourself. And I never forget that my father once said to me, and I'll tell you this story, he said to me, I know you. Even if you land on the moon, you'll quickly settle down, you'll fit into whoever's there, and you'll make a living. I'm not worried about you. And he made me believe it, and I believed it. So there was certainty, absolute certainty from quite a young age. In England, I was 18. And I had quite a good job before that. But the age of 18 was the last year of the call up to the British Army. And you had to go in. I didn't want to go in. What future is there in that? So I decided, I went to the chief rabbi at that time, who was a good friend of my father, and I said, look, I need a letter of recommendation for you. And I told him why. He says, first of all, look, a letter of recommendation doesn't mean anything, because either everybody's got their past in the future or their future in the past. And I never forget those words. But anyway, he gave me a name of somebody in Paris to go and see him, and he gave me a letter of introduction. And he wrote to the army authorities, look, I sent him on a special mission to France to work amongst the refugees there. You know, at that time, you had villages that were communist outside Paris. And so I had no money. My father couldn't give me, I had very, very little money. My mother gave me a big load of sandwiches and some fruit, and off I went to Paris. Now, having never been there, but I did speak French because I learned at school, not a very good French. So I land there on Friday. I go to the Jewish area. I got no money to pay for a hotel. So I found a tiny little hotel, 1 star, not much money, and I knew it was too late to contact the person who he gave me, and I'll do that Saturday night. And what did I do? I was in the Jewish area. I went in and booked a room in the hotel. Now, you must know the way we were brought up then, we knew from nothing. We did not know what was going on. We were very, very innocent. And all night long, I hear people walking up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs, down. I had no idea. Finally, I came down and spoke to, the guy there with a pudgy guy, and I said, what's going on? I can't sleep. You better give me another room. He laughed and he said, do you know where you're staying? I said, I'm staying in a hotel. He says, if you don't know, then I won't tell you. And it's a good thing you're leaving Saturday night. And that's it. I went to the Chabad. And of course, you always get a hot meal there. You come here, you get a hot meal usually on Sabbath. And then that night, I called him. His name was Paul Reutemann. And he says, where are you staying? I said, I was told not to tell you. I didn't realize myself. And I told him. He says, right, I booked a hotel for you. And you come straight over, tell me where to go. And it was a nice, decent hotel. And then he said, and I'll come over and see you. At 11 o'clock that night, he came over. And he says, right, you came just in time. Tomorrow I have 2 coaches going out to Switzerland because I have a seminar there. And I heard on Friday one of the youth leaders is ill, so I want you to take over. So I hear I was going to Switzerland on holiday. I was paid for it. I had a hotel, and I had nothing. But I went with absolute confidence and belief that loving kindness, Hashem will look after me. And I'm very serious about that. And anybody being in that situation in a strange country and you have nothing and no family to go to, but here I landed and it was good for them, just in time. And in life, Many things happen just in time. And then, at the end of the it lasted 2 weeks. There was somebody there called Dreyfus, and he said, look, I ran a very, very large grammar school in Paris, in Boulogne-Billancourt, and I got 150 boys between the age of 14 and 18 who need a housemaster. I just heard that the guy who continues resigned, he's got himself a better job. So immediately after that, I was there, and of course there's accommodation and food and a job and work to do. I move forward with confidence. Because you go with belief, things come to you. That is life. It suddenly comes and you know, but sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes it's like flying to New York, and you get there in record time because there's a tailwind of 65 miles an hour or something like that, as happened the other day. You get to New York, and there's no landing slot, so you have to go around for 1.5, 2 hours sometimes, till there's a landing spot comes available. And that's exactly the same in our lives. We carry on, but sometimes there's periods of time where you have to wait for that landing slot. While I'm in that school, and there's beautiful stories to tell on education, not necessary now, the chief minister, the first prime minister of Singapore, David Marshall, who happened to be Jewish, came to visit the school, the Sephardi school. Came to visit the school. We got on very well. He saw how I worked and invited me to come to Singapore. Last month I told you the story of Tugun Cohen. Those people who are on Eliyahu's inner circle have already got the video, and those people who are not on my circle, then make sure that you link up and you give me your mobile phone tonight, and you'll get that one as well. So I was there. And for a young man in my position, to be appointed at the age of 22 as principal of a school, but I already had the experience. It doesn't matter what age you are. Even the impossible is possible. And I went there, and just to close the circle on this, because you're always moving forward, there were a lot of girls coming around. I was being invited to every house, and these same girls were turning up. And believe me, the way we were brought up, I really didn't click. Didn't click. And then my wife came to visit her father from Australia for 6 weeks to go on to England. I only had 6 weeks, and it was soon after I arrived there. Well, here we are married. We've been together 59 years. So one never knows. No, it's not that. It's not the clapping. You have to clap to the big boss. What I'm saying is, in the blessing, in the bracha that we say every day, it says, Hamechin mitzadei gaver, who prepares each step that a person takes. But you have to really think of this. Don't worry what's going to happen today. Most people, when you make a program and you die what you're going to do tomorrow, and then you usually find that it's different. It's not always the same as you thought. There are surprises, new things happen, happenstances, all sorts of things, the unexpected. And we learn to expect the unexpected and to live with it all the time. But if you know out of love, each step of the way is prepared for us. Or we have freedom of choice. We can decide not to step in that direction. We can sometimes not see it clearly and not understand it. But that sudden change, that sudden meeting someone. I read I don't bother with the news. I don't waste my time on magazines, etc. But I saw a little story about a woman who met her husband about 10 years ago on the tube train in London going to work. Now, they were traveling together all the time. She looked at him, looks like a nice guy, and 10 times is a good enough opportunity. So she went over to him and passed him a note with great trepidation because she was, right? And he responded. And they've had a very happy marriage for 10 years now. But they met like this. Out of love, every step of the way is prepared for us. And that's what we have to keep in our mind and remember all of the time. That's prepared for us. So if we go forward with that confidence and not keep repeating over and over again in our mind about the negativity, and history will repeat itself. If we don't do that, we have in our brain the hippocampus. What is the hippocampus? It's an area of the brain which creates enthusiasm, creativity, problem solving. It's an area of the brain. And what happens is that when it's fed with negative things or depression, it shrinks. And therefore you notice that a person goes through a dark period in their life, or a partially dark period, their creativity is gone. They think they're not going to be the same. It happened to me only once in my life. Normally, each time there was a change, each time it was a difficulty, and sometimes very great ones, I always used to come to my wife and say, oh, I wonder what's waiting for us around the corner, because can be for the good. However bad it seems, somebody else might have jumped off a high building or a bridge, right? Or some of these things that happened. No, there's an opportunity. Something good is going to happen. And when you go through this, you realize that you can make it. But there was only one time in my life that I didn't. I had that feeling that I just talked about in a minute. I was well known on the market. I did consultations, very, very large companies, and I had a good name. Because one thing, I always spoke the truth. My mother said, remember, speak the truth, then you don't have to remember what you said. And it's very interesting, the word emet. Emet, truth. Aleph, mem, taf. Aleph is the first letter. Mem is the middle letter. Taf is the last letter. What does it mean? Real truth is, from whatever angle you look at it, it's the same story. Same story. And here I was in a situation where our daughter had passed away, and I could not function for 1 year. That was a time of mourning, and I had to look after the children and grandchildren, give them an enormous amount of support. They were small. And my wife and I gave a lot of support every single day. And I had to let clients down, and I could not continue. It reached a point where we were just coming to the 11th month, and I was thinking to myself, am I able to go back into the activities I had? It's sort of, I was so switched off from it. And the very night that we finished, somebody calls me up and says, I need you urgently. I won't go into details, but he had a big problem to solve, and he said, you're the only one who could do it for me. The night that we finished, he came to me, gave me an envelope of money, which was very useful at that time. You can imagine 1 year not working. And I carried on. In other words, every step of the way is prepared for us, but you have to watch your step. If you don't walk on the steps, according to the steps that are prepared for you, and misstep, what I mean by misstep is doing the wrong thing, or doing yourself harm, or being negative, then of course it can't work. In other words, we're being given all of the tools to help us. Now, we have, even though I promised you 8:15, If you want, we can do a little reflection, connection, mind direction exercise, and that's how we'll close it. Now, last time I gave that exercise on Shema, but I thought to myself, no, tonight, as I was talking to you, we're going to do it on the stand-up meditation, because it fits in so nicely what I had to tell you tonight. What we have to do is to close our eyes and paint a picture in our mind of where we want to be. Not think of the problem, but think of the way you would like to see that solution. Imagine it, whatever it is. Paint that picture in your mind. Holding that picture in your mind, we're going to stand up, and I'm going to walk you through it, because we're going to be like a tree in the forest. Because each person, when they're praying or dealing with Hashem, they are like a tree in the forest. They have to stand tall and push their mind up. Push it up, not down, up. But we're part of a forest, we're part of a community, we're part of everyone else. So each one is a tree also. We have to recognize that. Everyone is the same, full of life. And then we'll open up our hands and we'll draw down energy. And you will feel the energy. So let's start with that, just that part, and then we'll stand up and start, and I'll walk you through it. We'll do just a short one. I want everybody to close their eyes and hold their hands out like this. Can you see how I'm holding it? It's very important, properly, right? Now, you close your eyes and you draw down energy. You draw it down. You feel the warmth coming into your hands. That's energy. And it gets warmer and warmer. You're drawing down that energy. Now, while you're doing this, paint that picture in your mind of where you want to be. Not the problem that you have, but how you see the future and what you want. No negativity in that thought. Concentrate on that thought with your eyes closed, holding your hands out, drawing down that energy. Let your hands get warmer and warmer and warmer. Now please stand up and feel that you're a tree in the forest, stretching your mind up higher and higher with your eyes closed and that image in your mind. Now you'll find as you push up, you'll start to slip down a bit. Push again, as one has got to do in life. We have to push again and again and again, never giving up. Higher, and feel ourselves reaching up towards the sky, towards space. And imagine in our minds that there's a beautiful ocean and there's fire. It's called shamayim, esh, fire, mayim, water. And we have to move our heads up and keep that picture in our minds, holding our hands to the side and drawing down that energy. And absorb it and feel it and relax, feeling that energy coming down and that thought, that picture you painted in your mind, developing into reality. Enjoy it. Enjoy every moment. And now slowly, feel yourself coming down, down to your normal height, and then slowly put your hands on your side. Thank you. Just think of the possibilities. Fantastical stories showing how it all works in real life. Join the thousands who learnt the secrets that changed their lives. start this unique experience, read a chapter from my new book. Think, stand up, and walk tall. Go to my website and enjoy reading.